Okay, well, welcome. My name is Bert Serkin, and the presentation today is on smartphone photography. We're going to talk a lot of technical stuff because photography is technical, and a lot of people kind of shy away from that stuff. But your phone is only as good as you are. And today we're going to try to make you better. Okay, so the subtitle is Improve Your Smartphone Pictures and Become a Better Photographer. Our goal is to make you a little bit better photographer. This is the download link for these slides. It's on the handout. So if you have the handout, you don't need to write this down. And you'll be able to download all of these slides. My name is Bert Serkin. I do workshops mainly for professional photographers and other photographers. But I also do senior center presentations, of which some of you probably have been to a couple of other ones I've done here at Simsbury. And today we're doing smartphone photography. This is my background. I've basically been teaching since college, one thing or another. I've taught photography, I've taught programming, I've taught auditing, I've taught all kinds of things. So today we're going to start off with the most basic thing, how a picture becomes a photograph. We'll talk about what's the best smartphone camera, and it will surprise you. Common mistakes, things that we all make that we shouldn't. And then we'll talk about how we fix those things. We'll talk about how you can shoot macro or close-up photography with your smartphone. We'll talk about editing on your smartphone. I'll give you some tips. We'll talk about storing your pictures. And we'll talk about making your pictures permanent. And we'll end up with some final tips. So how does a picture become a photograph? Well, I'll bet a number of you have used film. Well, when you had film, you put film in your camera. You took your pictures, then you took the film out, and what did you do with it? You sent it to a laboratory. The laboratory developed the film, printed the film, and you ended up with pictures. Well, your smartphone or your digital camera is no different than this. So instead of film, we have inside our camera something called a sensor. The film was light sensitive. The sensor is light sensitive. Works exactly the same way. No different. The difference is we don't use chemicals to develop the pictures. We use software. There's a term called that has come about with, especially with smartphones, called computational photography. Computational photography means that we use software to develop our pictures. So just as film labs differed in their quality, you could choose your corner drugstore, or you could send it off to a high-end lab. You might see a difference in the pictures, you might not. The real only difference between smartphones is the software being used to develop the pictures. So what's the best smartphone camera? People have asked me this already today. They want to know their phone is the best. Well, I've got news for you. Your phone is not the best. There is a misconception. There is no best smartphone camera. There is none. They're all the same. You can look at reviews and you can see, somebody will review one phone and say this one's better than this one. They're all about the same. The hardware is almost identical in all of the cameras. The biggest difference is the software being used to develop the image. Everybody has good smartphone cameras. The differences are negligible. You may find one phone does something better than another phone and vice versa. You are what makes the difference. The photographer. If you really want to get technical, DxOMark, which is the rating service for smartphones, rates these cameras first. You've probably never heard of the Huawei Pura. That's the #1 rated smartphone camera. Google Pixel 9, the Honor Magic 6, so forth. These are the rated, but the differences are minuscule, almost negligible. The display ranking is almost more important because the display ranking shows how the image looks on your phone. So, what are the mistakes we make when we take pictures with our smartphones? Well, the first one is blurry pictures. And by the way, the first time I presented this was to a parrot society. So there's some pictures of a parrot in here. It happens to be my parrot. My parrot she turned 44 years old the other day. We've had her for 44 years. So that's why you're going to see some my parrot in there. But one of the mistakes you can make is blurry pictures. Has anybody ever got a blurry picture? Yeah, well, we all have. We all have. Well, I'm going to explain why and how we can avoid it. Another common mistake is not focusing, where our subject is out of focus, but something else is in focus. Crooked pictures, where that's the top line is the straight line, and, well, it's a crooked picture. I am notorious for doing this. Digital zoom, where you pinch to zoom in on something. Sometimes you don't have a choice if you want to get something that's far away, but of course, if you used your feet and got closer, maybe you get a better picture. Digital zoom is bad. Exposure issues, where we take a picture and it's too dark or too light. Color issues, where the color doesn't look right. And it isn't right. Centering your subject. I bet you all do this. This is something that human nature wants to do. We want to center our subject dead center in the middle of the frame, and this is the worst thing you can do. Taking a picture without a clearly identifiable subject. What's the subject here? Is it the tree, the path, the brush? We don't know. Cutting off your subject. Not showing the viewer the whole picture. Not watching your backgrounds. The beautiful hydrangea flower, but the flowers in the background distract from it. How can we take it so that we need to move our feet so we get a good background? So, how do we get these things right? Well, the first is understanding photography. Cameras all cameras have a lot of similarities to the human eye. For instance, camera has film or a sensor. Human eye has a retina. There's a diaphragm in the lens. We call it an aperture in photography. We have an iris in our eye. Diaphragm and iris. Then we have aperture and pupil. We have a lens. We both have a lens. And, black paint. I'm not sure where that fits in. But they're very similar. Cameras were, in fact, designed to work like the human eye. That's what we do. We design things that we know. But in reality, they work very, very differently. And this is one of the problems in photography, is that we rely on our senses as a human being, that we see things with our eyes in our brain, and we expect our cameras to work the same way. They don't. So our cameras do not see the way our human eyes can see. Cameras need a lot more light than our eyes. I can see everybody in here right now, and it's pretty dark, but I can see everybody in pretty good detail. If I were to take a picture with a camera, I wouldn't get that. Cameras need a lot more light. Cameras need to be able to focus on a subject. I don't need to focus my eyes on you. Everybody looks sharp right now. Doesn't work that way with a camera. Eyes continually adjust for lighting conditions. Cameras have to be told to compensate. And oddly enough, our biggest detriment is our brain. Because our brain only lets us see what we want to see. Cameras see everything. How many times have you taken a picture and you look in the picture and you say, oh, I didn't know that was in here? Well, you saw it with your eyes. It's because your brain filters out clutter. It only lets you see what you want to see. Cameras, though, see everything. Our brain can compensate for color, but our cameras can't. The cameras have to be modified to see the right colors. We can see detail in the lightest and darkest of areas of a scene. Our cameras cannot do that. So the most basic tip I can give you today, and I'll bet it's one that many of you have never even considered, is clean the lens. How many of you keep your phone in your pocket or your purse? Yeah, well, we're all guilty of that, aren't we? And what's in our pocket and purse? Lint. And when we take our phone out of the pocket or purse, what do we do? Take it out with? Our fingers that have oils on them. And we touch the lens. Clean your lens. A dirty lens will always affect the quality of your pictures. Simplest thing you can do. Use a microfiber cloth with a high-quality lens cleaning solution. That's a bottle of ROR. ROR stands for residual oil remover. I've been buying ROR since the 1980s. I used to buy it from a guy who made it in his garage in Chicago. I used to mail him a check, and he used to mail me a bottle. You can now buy it most anywhere. Any camera store, most lens optical shops have it. ROR is absolutely the best thing. I don't have any interest in ROR. I've been buying it just like anybody else. It is the best thing for eyeglasses, for camera lenses, for anything optical. I use it on my computer screen. A little bottle like that, a 1 ounce bottle, will last you a long time. Okay. The next tip is get to know your camera, which means read the manual. There is a manual. I keep hearing that. There's no manual. There is a manual. They may not give it a book to you, but you can download it. It's a PDF. And the manual will tell you things about your smartphone you have no idea it had. You'll learn so much. Read the manual. So, why do we get blurry pictures like this? Well, I took this picture with my smartphone, and it was in dim light. Okay? So why did it come out blurry? Because remember, cameras need a lot more light than our eyes do. So what happened is we ended up taking this at a shutter speed of 1/8 of a second. Now, inside your smartphone or digital camera or film camera, there's a shutter. The shutter opens for a period of time and then closes, just to let enough light in. When there isn't much light, it needs to open longer. And if you move your camera even the slightest bit, you're going to blur the image. And that's the cause of 99% of all blurred images. Low shutter speed because of low light. It's impossible to hand hold. The minimum shutter speed should be about 1/100th of a second. Split up a second into 100 pieces, and it's a pretty small fraction of a second. 1/8 of a second sounds like a small piece too, but it isn't. It's enough to easily blur. There's no way any human being can hold any kind of camera for 1/8 of a second without blurring the picture. After taking a picture, you can touch your picture in the viewer on your camera, and you can select either details or properties or something like that, and it will show you how that picture was taken. It will show you the shutter speed. So if you look at this image at the bottom in that black area on my phone, that's what it told me. It told me that I shot it at ISO 320, 23 millimeter, f1.7, 1/8 of a second. Well, right now we're just talking about the 1/8 of a second, the shutter speed. Too slow. So if you move it even the slightest amount, you're going to blur the image. You can also get a blurry image if your subject moves during the exposure. So if you're taking a fast-running grandchild, chances are, if the light isn't real good, it's going to blur. If you take it outdoors in bright sunlight, chances are it won't blur. But the dimmer the light, the more likely it's going to blur because your camera is going to use a slower shutter speed. You can manually set the shutter speed. That means going into a manual mode on your camera. Most cameras will allow you to do this. You can go into your smartphone and you can say, I want to set the shutter speed to 1/200th of a second. And it will compensate in other ways to get enough light. We'll talk about that in a minute. Pressing the shutter button, or there is no button on your phone, but when you touch that little spot on your phone to take the picture, if you don't touch it really gently, you're going to blur the picture because you're pushing it and you're moving your phone. You want to touch that ever so slightly. Just touch it. Don't push it. It's not a button. This is a big problem with blurry pictures with smartphones. People want to press hard. Don't press hard. Take lots of pictures. I apprenticed with a professional photographer when I was very young, and one of the things he taught me was film is cheap. Well, film wasn't cheap. It was actually pretty expensive. But As a professional photographer, the more pictures you take, the more likely you're going to get good pictures. Today, digital is real cheap. You can take all the pictures you want, not going to cost you anything, delete the ones you don't like. But when you're taking a picture, take a bunch of pictures, and then delete the ones that didn't come out as good. Chances are one will come out better than the others. You can also use something on your phone called burst mode. Burst mode will take a series of pictures in a row. And if you're taking a picture of a moving subject, like a geyser, you can take a series like this. If you're taking pictures of a running child, chances are one of them won't be as blurry as the others. So in burst mode, you can take a series of pictures, and then you can choose which one you like best. It's great for moving subjects like running kids. Learn to focus your camera. Most of you, I'll bet, you aim your camera, your smartphone, at your subject, and you tap the shutter. This is not the way to take a picture with a smartphone. You have to focus. Now, if you don't manually focus, you're relying on your camera to figure out what it should focus on. This is not the best way to do it. So, focusing is really, really easy on smartphones. All you have to do is touch the screen where you want to focus. So, I apologize for this being a little jittery. I was hand holding my phone when I did this. But here I'm aimed at a fence post and a hydrangea in the background. And I'm going to focus back and forth between the two. So initially I touch the fence post and it's in focus. Now I've touched the hydrangea. It's in focus. And I'm going to go back and forth. And you notice whatever's not in focus is blurry. And all you have to do is touch your screen. And it will focus on what you touch on. Incredibly simple. And you can control what's sharp and what isn't. On my phone, and most phones are similar, the icons may look a little different, I get this little circle with a lock at the top. So if I touch at the hydrangea will get in focus. But if I touch and hold at a certain point, it will lock. So if you touch there and you hold for a second or two, it locks the focus. And that open lock turns into a closed lock. Crooked pictures are real easy to resolve. Your phone has built into it a grid, should you choose to turn it on. The grid will show you what's horizontal and what's vertical. So you can kind of see the grid on this picture, and I'll emphasize it by turning it yellow. And this is the grid. The grid allows you to align things so things aren't crooked. Every smartphone I know of has the ability to turn on a grid. As I mentioned, digital zoom, where you pinch to zoom, is a bad idea. What does digital zoom do? Well, you have two kinds of zoom on your phone. You have optical and digital zoom. Some phones have 2 lenses, some have 3, some have 4, some have 5. My phone has 5 lenses. Different lenses allow you to have different optical zooms. What's the difference? Optical zoom is where We use a lens to magnify, bring something in close, or wide angle, maybe for a landscape, we can take everything. So having more optical zooms is a good thing. It gives us choice. But if you want to zoom in, you can pinch to zoom. And when you do that, you're still using one of those lenses, but what you're doing is you're taking all of the little pixels on the sensor and you're enlarging them. You're stretching them. And that causes an issue. Optical zoom is great, but digital zoom stretches those pixels and you end up getting very reduced quality. So here's one image where the image on the left was taken with a 3 times optical zoom. The image on the right was taken with a 3 times digital zoom. Digital zoom meaning pinch to zoom, where you're stretching your fingers out on your screen. And you're always going to get a lower quality when you do that. Now sometimes, if you're taking a wild animal, and maybe a rattlesnake, and you don't want to get too close to the rattlesnake, digital zoom is great. But if you have a choice, get closer. You're always better getting closer. So when we take a picture, what are we actually taking a picture of? You'd be surprised. It's not what you think. So if I take a picture of this tree in snow, what am I taking a picture of? No. What's the difference between these two pictures? Read the text. What is the difference between these two pictures? Who said light? There you go. The difference is light. I took this picture from my bedroom window. Not much of a picture. The picture on the left is pretty boring. The one on the right actually has a little bit of interest, doesn't it? What makes it interesting? The light. When we take pictures of light. We take pictures of the light that's falling on our subject, not our subject. This is the hardest thing for photographers to understand. George Eastman said, light makes photography. Embrace light, admire it, love it. But above all, know it. Know light. Know it for all you're worth, and you'll know the key to photography. In photography, we have something called exposure. Exposure deals with light. If we want to take pictures that aren't too dark or too light, we have to concern ourselves with exposure. Your camera has 3 ways of controlling exposure. The first is the shutter speed that we already talked about. The shutter opens for a period of time and closes. And during that period of time, it lets light in. The sensor in your camera needs a certain amount of light. If it gets too much, your image is going to be too bright. Doesn't get enough, it's going to be too dark. So your shutter controls it. You also have something called an aperture. The aperture also controls how much light, but in smartphones, the aperture is pretty much non-existent. In any other camera, we have an aperture that's useful. Smartphones don't have that. And the third thing is something called the ISO speed, which is the sensitivity of the sensor. We can change it, but there's a cost in doing that. So we have these three things to control, but the phones do it for us pretty well, but sometimes they get fooled. So, exposure determines how light or dark a photograph is going to be. So if we look at these three, we see one is underexposed on the left, the middle is correctly exposed, and on the right is overexposed. We want to get the one in the middle. If you have a dim subject and a bright background, in other words, it's backlit, we'll end up getting pictures that are too dark. Our camera gets fooled. It sees that bright sun, thinks there's more light than there really is. We need to reduce the contrast between the subject and background. You can do that with flash or with any other light source. But the simplest way is just to make sure your subject is evenly lit. Shooting in the shade is one of the best places you can take pictures. If you're taking pictures of people, sunlight is horrible. Why? Anybody know? Contrast, shadows. Yes. Bright sun causes very harsh shadows across the face. The nose creates a harsh shadow, the forehead, the eye sockets. People don't look good with harsh shadows on their face. When you take pictures in shade, you have a nice even light. There's an adjustment all digital cameras have called exposure compensation. And it's really easy to do. I'm going to show you how. How many people have ever used exposure compensation on their smartphone? I have 2 people. Okay, great. That's not so great. Now I have to tell the truth. No, okay. I was just joking. Exposure compensation is really easy to do on your smartphone. You just slide your finger. You can do it through a menu. For instance, on my smartphone, this is the menu. And in the middle, you use something that says EV, and it shows plus 1.0. And I can move this with my finger, slide it back and forth to get a different EV. EV stands for exposure value. And plus 1 means I'm telling the camera, let more light in than you think you need. If I just set it to minus 1, it would let in less light than it thinks it needs. Sometimes we have to tell our phones. Well, just like the focus, we have a control on our smartphone, and almost all smartphones work the same way. You slide your fingers left and right. So, if you, right down there, we can slide our finger right or left. And the great thing about a smartphone is you see the result immediately on the screen. So if the image looks too dark, you can slide your finger to the right until it looks good. If it looks too bright, go the other way. Really, really simple. And you can control how light or dark a picture is. By the way, when you're taking a picture of a sunset, how many of you have ever taken a sunset in your phone and not been happy with it? Yeah. It's because the sun is so bright, the foreground is so dark, the phone has no idea how to expose it. What you're interested in is the color in the sunset. But because you've got a sun aimed right at the camera, it thinks there's a lot of light. But there isn't. So you need to slide to the darker side, and you'll get more of the color. So here's a snow scene. Snow is really bad for phones or cameras, digital cameras, because it fools the camera into thinking there's more light than there really is, or less light than there really is. So we basically have to overexpose or go to plus 1 to make the scene look normal. Look at the sky in both pictures. The sky is too dark on the one on the left, which is the way the camera decided it should be. But on the right, I had to overexpose in order to get the colors to look right. Snow isn't gray like it is on the left. So how does a camera compensate for low light? I mentioned that we need a lot of light, more light than we think we need to take a picture with a digital camera. So how does a digital camera compensate for that? Well, we have three ways, as I said earlier. We have the shutter. We have, but the problem is if you use a shutter speed that's too slow, you're going to blur your image. So we can't let too much light, we can't allow more light in through the shutter. That really, we don't have a lot of control over. We have to make sure that's fast enough. The aperture, but smartphones don't really have an aperture that's useful. They do have one, but it's not very useful. It's very limited. But ISO, or the sensitivity of the sensor, is the third thing. And this is the main way smartphones adapt for low light. Your camera can increase the ISO sensitivity. Now, the thing is, the sensor in your phone or your digital camera has one sensitivity to light. Only one. However, we can increase it through software. The typical numeric range for ISO is anywhere from ISO 50 to something very high. And when we increase the ISO speed, I mentioned there's only one ISO speed, one real ISO speed. We do it in software. We amplify the signal. It's like taking a radio dial and you want it louder, you turn the dial up. The music gets louder. But what happens when you start getting too loud? It distorts. And that's what happens with a camera sensor. When you turn the ISO too high, it distorts. And we get what's called in photography noise. That's the distortion. So basically, your camera controls the ISO speed, although you do have the ability to change it. As the light decreases, your camera has to increase the sensitivity, meaning it's adding distortion and noise. To give you an example, this is a picture I took with my smartphone at ISO 80. Now, ISO 80 is a low ISO speed, and the picture came out really sharp, really clear, good color, good contrast, and nice and sharp. However, when I shot it with low light at ISO 3200, that's what I got. Now, our phones and most digital cameras have something called noise reduction built into them. So they're designed to take a picture like the one on the right and make it better through software. But even when we do that, the image at the bottom right is after noise reduction. So even though it's better than the one before noise reduction, it's not that much better. So when your camera chooses a high ISO speed, a very high ISO speed, you're going to get low quality images. So, what do you need for a good picture? Light. Thank you. Good light. The word photography has two parts: photography. Photo means light from the Greek, and graphy means drawing from the Greek. So photography means drawing with light. That's what we do in photography. We take pictures of light. If we don't have good light, we don't have a good picture. The best subject in bad light is always going to look bad. An average subject in great light can look great. Light makes the difference. Go through a magazine sometime and analyze the pictures, or on the web. Who gets magazines anymore? Look at the web at good pictures. And I don't mean on Facebook. Don't look on Facebook. Facebook doesn't have any good pictures. Look at a website that has good pictures. And what you're going to see is good light. So you don't take pictures of subjects. You take pictures of the light that falls on subjects. Of course, you do take pictures of subjects, but the light is the important part. Light is the essence of photography. Light has many qualities. It has intensity. It can be bright or dim. It can be soft or hard. It has color. It can be warm, cool, or neutral. It has a direction. Causes where the shadows appear. Light gives us shadows, which creates depth. We can have momentary light, which is a flash, or continuous light. If we have a diffused light, it has a soft look. If it comes from a point source, it has a harsh look. So if we look at these two images, the image on the left was taken with soft light. The image on the right with hard light. Look at the differences. Look at the shadows. On the right, we have a distinct shadow. We have a soft shadow on the left. Look at the gradation of the light and dark on the egg on both. One is hard, one is soft. Soft light almost always gives a better image. Harsh point source light is never your best light. So outdoors in bright sunlight, it's a harsh light. Light has color. But as humans, we are incapable of seeing it. Color is measured on something called the Kelvin scale. You can kind of see the Kelvin scale here. It goes from real warm on the left, which is about 1,000 Kelvin, to 10,000 Kelvin, which is a cool blue. Daylight is considered to be 5,200 Kelvin. Back in the film days, film was either daylight or tungsten. So the film you bought was balanced for daylight or for tungsten. When they said daylight, it meant it was balanced for 5,200 Kelvin, meaning midday on the summer solstice, because that's when they measured 5,200 Kelvin. So midday, your pictures would come out perfect. But with film, wouldn't come out as good any other time of day. The colors would not be correct. We had to correct it with filters. But with digital cameras, we have a different tool. These are some light sources, and you can see what their color temperature is. So if we take a picture of Boozy, that's the name of my bird, and if you look at this, it probably looks pretty good to you. But that light is too warm. This light is too cool. And just like Goldilocks, this one is just right. When you looked at one of these, you probably couldn't tell that the color was wrong. It's not until you see all three of them that you can see the difference. Our goal is to get the color just right. I mentioned your brain is not allowing you to see color. So if we look at a cool white fluorescent fixture, that's what we see. What does our smartphone or camera see? It sees this kind of gaudy greenish yellow color. But our brain translates color for us into something it knows we want to see. Your brain is fighting you. Your brain processes what your eyes see. It only lets you see what it thinks you want to see. You can't see the color of light, so you need to identify the color of light and adjust. Your camera actually tries to do this, but I'm going to show you how you can help it. If we look at a strawberry, we know a strawberry looks red. If we were to color the strawberry, if we were to shine a bluish light on this strawberry, we'd still see it as red. Our brain wouldn't let us see it any other way. However, our camera will definitely see it differently. Because our brain is translating, we can't see this. But our cameras will. So, as I said, your camera expects everything to be lit by midday sun, 5200 Kelvin. Any other light source creates unnatural colors. Your camera will try to correct, but sometimes you need to help it. There's something called a white balance setting. And on my phone, this is the menu I have for white balance. You notice in the red block, maybe hard to read, it says WB, stands for white balance. And it's set to 3000. Now, tungsten light bulbs, which we don't have anymore, have a color temperature of about 3200 or 3400. So if we were to take a picture by a tungsten light bulb, we'd need to change this to about 3000 or 3400. And we would get the right colors. The camera would then see the right colors. So we can take a picture like the one on the left. This is the way the camera took it. Or the one on the right, which is where the white balance was adjusted. It's an extreme example, but it shows you how your camera sees things differently. Now, when I looked at the scene on the left with my eyes, it looked like the picture on the right because my brain was translating. Didn't let me see the ambient colored light. Then we get to composition. How you arrange things in an image determines how pleasing it is for other people to look at. After all, why are we taking pictures? It's to show other people, isn't it? And if we want other people to like our pictures, we have to think about composition. The most basic rule of composition is called the rule of thirds. It's really easy. It's a grid where we have two vertical and two horizontal lines dividing up the frame of your camera or your phone or whatever we're using. And your subject should be at one of those four intersecting points. Or it should be aligned along a vertical or horizontal. So if we were taking a picture of a oceanscape, the ocean horizon should probably be along the bottom line or the top line. It could be either. But you don't want the ocean to be in the middle. If you're taking a picture of a person, you want them vertically aligned on this line or this line. We want to have our subject anything but centered. And your subject should always, always be looking into the image, not out of it. I'll give you an example in a second. You don't want to center your subject. And human nature we want to do this by human nature. We take our phone, there's usually a circle in the middle of the frame, and we just put that circle on our subject. Bad idea. Don't do it. Resist. So remember that grid? We can use that grid because that grid is the rule of thirds, and it's on your phone already. You can tell your phone, leave the grid on all the time, and every time you go to use your camera, the grid will be there. Doesn't show up in your pictures, but it helps you compose. It's there for a purpose. So if we look at this hummingbird, is this a good picture? It's centered. It fails. Subject is centered. How about this picture? It's looking out of the image. Doesn't matter if it's an animal or a human. Same rule applies. It's looking out of the image. If we look at this one succeeds. The subject is aligned on a rule of thirds line. It's looking into the image. So if we look at all three of these, we can see that one clearly looks better than the others. And it's built into our DNA to like the image on the right more than the other two images. Every human being has this built into them. That's why we have the rule of thirds. Clutter is probably the biggest destroyer of images there is. Taking minimalistic images works. The viewer should be able to easily identify the subject without having to look around at clutter. You need to train your eyes to look for clutter because your brain is filtering out clutter. When you look at a scene, you don't see the clutter, but your camera does. Ansel Adams said, a good photograph is knowing where to stand. That means that moving your feet just a foot or two in either direction completely changes a picture. You change the background. And when you change the background, you either add or eliminate clutter. Albert Einstein said, out of clutter, find simplicity. Move your feet, find the simple background. So if we look at this image, it's an interesting subject, but it's obscured by visual clutter. The photographer did not see that clutter. Why? Because their brain wasn't trained to see it. They just saw the subject and said, oh, that's an interesting subject. And it is. But by moving your feet, choosing a different angle, we can get a completely different view of it, clutter-free. The image on the left, we have all kinds of, we got a house in the background, we got a trailer, it looks like, some poles, some trash, who knows what. All distracting your eye. But in this image, there's nothing distracting your eye. You know exactly what to look at. Backgrounds can clutter an image. or they can help emphasize your subject. Plain backgrounds are fantastic when you can get them because they emphasize your subject. Of course, you may not want a plain background. It depends on the picture you're taking. Sometimes you're taking a landscape and the background is integral to the image. But sometimes it's not. Elliot Erwood said, photography is an art of observation. It has everything to do with the way you see things. It has little to do with the things you see and everything to do with the way you see them. What he's referring to is you have to fight your brain. You have to fight your brain and you have to look past what it wants you to see everything there is. You have to be an observer. One of the great things you can do with a smartphone is macro photography. All smartphones have the capability, and you can get some images that are really, really interesting. This is an image I took with my smartphone. I did this on my kitchen table. Close-up photography, or macro photography, is all about capturing detail. That means getting close to your subject, real close to your subject. Macro images give us the ability to see intricate details that we don't see normally. So this flower was a flower on my kitchen table in amongst other flowers, and I never looked at that flower specifically. Nobody did. However, when we take a picture, a close-up like this, you get to study it, and you get to see the detail that you never see when you look at something. Almost all smartphones have macro mode. The way I took this is I bought a very inexpensive, about $10, phone holder. The universal will hold any phone. And I put it on a light stand. I happen to have a light stand, but if you have a tripod, or I'm going to show you a mini tripod you can buy very inexpensively, you need to put your camera on something like this. You can do it handheld, but again, because you're so close, remember I said if you move your camera even the slightest bit, you'll blur it? Well, when you're really close, you blur it even more. So it becomes much harder to take a good picture when you're real close to your subject. So you can see how close I am. I'm probably only 3 or 4 inches from that flower. But I have my camera on a support. As I said, you can take them handheld, but you really should use some kind of support. You can buy a little tripod like this. It even comes with a little remote shutter release. You can hook up through Bluetooth to your phone, and you can trip the shutter without having to touch anything and move it by accident. But for $15, you can get a little tripod, and it comes with a phone holder for $15. And you can take all kinds of smartphone pictures. These are some smartphone pictures that I've taken. And here's another one. It's incredible, isn't it? It's a $20 bill, or part of a $20 bill. Here's how I took it. I have this little stand. I couldn't find this on Amazon. I don't know where I got this, but I've had it for a while. But any tripod will work. And I put my phone in this little tripod. Then I took a $20 bill and I put it on a vitamin bottle. The reason I put it on a vitamin bottle was just to raise it up because I needed to get it close to the lens. And actually, I went through 3 or 4 vitamin bottles before I found the right height. But once I did, this is the way I took it. And basically, it was very, very simple. And that's the picture it took. Your phone has a macro mode. Some phones automatically go into macro mode when you get close to a subject. Other phones, you have to choose macro mode. Usually a picture of a flower. Well, whether you're taking macro or otherwise, you can enlarge your images quite a bit. It doesn't matter whether you're taking a close-up or from something far away. Now, the thing about smartphones is, remember I told you that they record information on a sensor, okay? Well, the sensor in a smartphone is tiny. When I say tiny, I mean it's about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little more, maybe 1/4 of an inch. If you take it in a larger digital camera, it could be 1 inch, or it could be 1.5 inches. The bigger the sensor, the better the quality. So smartphones will never take great quality images. I know you think they do. I was going to take a picture of with a smartphone in a larger camera and show you the difference, but I decided not to do that. Smartphones will never take great pictures, but you've got it in your pocket all the time. I use mine all the time. I'm a professional photographer. I have professional gear, but I still go out and take pictures with my smartphone. So can you enlarge it and put it on the wall and have it look good? Depends how much you enlarge it. With my professional camera, I can make a huge image on the wall and it looks great. With my smartphone, I can't do the same thing because it's convenience more than anything else. So it doesn't matter whether you're close or far away, how big you can make the image is the same. There's a picture of a penny. You can see incredible detail. This is one of my bird's feathers. And it gives you an idea of size. Which brings us to the next point. This image did not come out of my camera looking this good. What do you have to do to get an image to look better? You need to edit it. Every phone has at least one editing program. I have like 3 or 4 on mine. So if a picture doesn't come out the way you expected, you can try editing the image. As I said, all phones come with at least one editing program. You can make a picture brighter, darker. They usually have a little magic wand on them to do an automatic adjustment, and that usually does wonders for an image. Could correct the color, could do all kinds of things. So you can change the brightness, contrast, highlights, shadows, color, all kinds of things. You can crop, you can straighten, you can use filters. Almost all editing programs have these filters that you can get a painterly effect on an image, or you can make it look high contrast or low contrast, or you can adjust it all different ways. You can adjust portraits. They even have the ability now, Google Pixel has the ability to change smiles. So you take a picture of somebody now smiling, you can put a smile on their face. You can do selective editing. One part of the image looks a little dark, you can lighten that part. You can remove objects or remove an entire background from the subject. These use AI. You can put text on your images. You can create collages by combining multiple images. You do all kinds of things, including artistic effects. You can create a vintage look, a grunge look, an HDR. We'll talk about HDR in a minute, which is high dynamic range. You can share right from your phone to social media. All kinds of things that you can do with your editing program. If you've never tried it, try it. Take an image you've taken already and choose. There's a menu, usually a little hamburg menu or a 3-dot menu, and choose the menu. Choose your edit or adjust. I don't know what the exact wording will be. And try it. And you'll be surprised what you can do with your images. So let's talk about something called a JPEG file. How many people have heard the term JPEG? Pretty much everybody. How many people have heard of raw data? Fewer hands. Every single digital camera takes raw data. And what is raw data? Raw data is the data that comes right off the sensor. And believe it or not, there isn't a digital camera on this planet that takes a color picture. They all take black and white. They use software to create the color image. They use something called a Bayer filter. Gets into all kinds of complicated stuff, but the bottom line is they use a filter over it, and then they use computational photography software to convert the black and white to a color picture. So the raw file is just data, and initially, it's just data without color. But the raw file does get the color information, but it's not an image, it's data. Every digital camera has the ability to convert that raw file into an image, which is called a JPEG. That's a JPEG file. So what happens when we do that? Well, first of all, you can let your smartphone do it, or you can do it. If you let your smartphone do it, it's just like when you were in the old film days, you brought your film to the drugstore and you had them develop it, and somebody was wearing a red sweater and it comes out greenish or maybe orange. And you say, wait a minute, that wasn't the right color. Well, you could send it back and they could reprint it. And maybe you'd get the right color this time. Well, your phone is doing the same thing. It takes this raw file, converts it to a JPEG, adjusting everything in there. It adjusts the color, the balance, the saturation, the hue, the sharpening, contrast, all kinds of things. And as it does this, it makes decisions, arbitrary decisions. Oh, I think that's a red sweater. No, it was really orange. But once it does this, you lose the ability to get the data back, because after it does this, a JPEG is about, I would say, 1/10 the size of a raw data file. So it throws out 90% of the data once it does this conversion. And at that point, you don't have a lot of data in there, so you can't really correct very much. So if your camera does it, you lose most of your data. Almost every smartphone, not all, but most, will allow you to shoot RAW. Samsung calls it Expert RAW. Apple calls it Pro RAW. You can get this RAW file, but you have to tell your phone you want it. Now, you may not want to do this all the time because it requires editing. You must edit it. And we don't always want to edit our files. Not all the time, anyway. But if you have an important picture you're taking, you may want to take it in RAW. Usually your phone will give you both a JPEG that it converted and the RAW file. So here's a picture I took with my smartphone in Boston. And this is the JPEG that my smartphone provided me with. This is the edited RAW file So I took the raw file that my camera gave me and edited it. And this is the image I got. So you can get a much better image if you shoot raw and you edit it. But it takes a little bit of work, it takes some experience in editing your images. But when you do that, you can get better images. It's not for everyone. Okay, some tips. Well, smartphones have a bunch of shooting modes built into them. We have pre-programmed modes designed to take certain kinds of pictures. So you don't have to think about all the settings that you might want to set. These are some of the examples. You can take portraits, food, macro, panorama, night, time-lapse, slow motion. And there's a mode called Pro. Pro mode usually lets you change the settings on your camera. For instance, you can change the shutter speed, you can change the ISO speed, things like that. But we have all kinds of modes we can use. And if you're shooting food, go into food mode. And what it'll do is wherever you focus on, it will kind of blur the rest of the food, kind of make it look like a food magazine picture. Portraits, same thing, so forth. So use these shooting modes. Find out what they are, find out what modes you have, and when to use them. For lighting, always try to use a softer light. Diffused window light, anything but a harsh light. Harsh light will always make your pictures look harsh. Avoid those harsh shadows. Use exposure compensation. If your picture comes out too dark, retake it. Slide your finger to the right or left to change the exposure compensation, and you'll see the effect right on your display. Post-process, meaning edit, to correct lighting issues. Too dark, you can correct some of these using editing. Most smartphones have something called an HDR mode. HDR stands for high dynamic range. The problem is, when we look at a really high contrast scene like a sunset, our eyes can see detail in everything. So the foreground is pretty dark, usually. We can see detail in the foreground. The sun, the setting sun, we don't look right at the sun, but at the bright sky, we can see detail in all the clouds. We can see all that color. Our phone can't. We don't have that ability. And this is why we have this mode called high dynamic range. It's good for high contrast scenes. It will ruin pictures that are not high contrast. Some phones now do this automatically, and if it doesn't do it automatically, you need to turn it on. It's especially useful for sunrise and sunset shots. What it does is it takes 3 or more pictures at one time. It takes one darker than it thinks it should be, one the way it should be, one lighter than it should be. It uses the lighter picture to get the foreground, which is dark. It uses the darker picture to get the bright sky, which is really bright, and it darkens it. And the middle picture will take other areas that are mid-lit, we'll call it. So it basically takes multiple images and combines them, takes the best parts of each one to create one image that looks much better than a non-HDR image. It takes the darker parts of an image and lightens them, takes the lightest parts of a scene and darkens them. You don't want to use it on normal pictures. Here's an example of an HDR scene. This is a bright sun. The camera was facing the sun. One image on the left, you can see how dark the foreground is. The HDR looks great. You can take night sky pictures with your smartphone. Not all smartphones have a mode for this, but it's one of the shooting modes you may have. My smartphone has this. I took this Friday night. The image on the left was taken with the normal lens, and the image on the right was taken with a 5 times zoom lens, a 5 times optical zoom lens. And you can actually see Orion here. Anybody recognize Orion? And his belt is right here. And actually, these 3 stars are his belt. What I was hoping to get was his sword, because there's a nebula in his sword, but I didn't get it. It's really hard to aim it just right. But you can actually take night sky pictures with your phone. If this was the right time of year, which is in the summer, we could probably take a Milky Way picture with our phone. But our skies are pretty bright here. That would be kind of hard. Don't jerk your phone when you take a picture. Brace yourself against an immovable object to steady yourself. If you have to, change the shutter speed to make sure you have a faster shutter speed so you don't blur the image. You can change the ISO speed as well to avoid camera shake. If the subject is moving, you're going to need to set a faster shutter speed. If you don't have a lot of light, you need to set a faster shutter speed. If you're outside in daylight, you're probably getting a fast enough shutter speed. Always focus on the eye, whether it be an animal or human. Touch the eye on the screen. If nothing else is sharp, the eye must be sharp. The eye conveys life. The only thing that conveys life in an image. Use the rule of thirds. Try varying your perspective. Shoot from a low angle, a high angle, from either side. It completely changes an image. And don't be afraid to edit. And I mentioned when I apprenticed, there were 2 rules. The first one was film is cheap. I told you about that one. The second one was only show your best images. Don't ever show a bad image to anybody. And they will think you are a much better photographer than you are. You know, as a joke, I tell students, photography students, what's the difference between a professional photographer and an amateur photographer? Well, an amateur photographer gets 1 good image out of 10. A professional photographer gets 3 good images out of 10. They just don't show you the bad ones. So only show your best images. And remember, in every single image, there are always 2 people. Somebody's going to view your image. Think of them when you're taking the image. What do you want them to see? The next 2 sections are going to be quick. Storing your digital images. It's not a matter of if you're going to lose your images. It's a matter of when you're going to lose them. You will lose all your digital images, period. No questions asked. I got this email literally 3 days ago, or on March 21st, 2 days ago. Hi, Bert. We briefly experienced a technical issue that caused a deletion of data for some people. If you do not have backups turned on, unfortunately, you will not be able to recover your lost data. This is from a cloud service, a major cloud service. Do not trust your images to the cloud. You will lose them. You should have at least 2 backups of anything that's important to you. Now, some pictures aren't that important, but some pictures are. Your backup should be in different places. You can use the cloud, but also use a hard drive, internal or external. I like to use an external backup. I back up periodically, and then I remove the external drive from my computer, because that way ransomware can't get to it. electrical glitches can't get to it. I only plug it into my computer when I'm backing up. Use your backup service. On Android, use Google Photos. On iPhone, use the iCloud service. Organize your images in folders that have meaningful names. Learn the file system of your phone. So many people don't understand how to use it. But if you do this, you'll have organized images. Backup on a regular basis. Can't stress backup enough. And take it from someone who's lost a lot. You can make your photos permanent. Consider printing. How many people regularly print pictures? Only a few. Well, you know, for years, families have passed down albums of pictures. We're never going to have that again. The next generation will not have any pictures. We don't have albums of pictures anymore. Almost everything is stored digitally, and they will eventually disappear. Printed photos create tangible memories. You can also create home decor. You can print at a variety of local places, or you can do it online. Don't even have to leave your comfort of your easy chair. Just upload it to a service, and they'll mail it to you. You can also create photo books. They're really easy to do. You just send a bunch of pictures to a company like Printique or Mixbook or Vistaprint or Shutterfly or any of these, and you send them some money along with it, and they'll send you a book.
Do you find that Google is doing that in your pictures? I see they take, and just go through them and put them in a book like and then try to sell it to you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, Google does some really cool stuff, though, with pictures. You can also create wall art. Don't try to enlarge smartphone pictures too large, because the more you enlarge it, the more you'll see the defects. And every image has defects. Smartphones have more than larger phones, but when you enlarge it, you're going to see the defects more. So you don't want to enlarge it too big. Some final tips. This is kind of the stuff I have on the handout. If you didn't get a handout, they are on the table over there. And in addition, there is a program evaluation form on that table. And Simsbury Library or the Simsbury Senior Center would appreciate if you'd fill out an evaluation form. So these are the final tips. And it kind of summarizes the stuff we've been talking about here. So,
for over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events.
They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
Your schools, and
your government
come together.